as we gather ourselves for the planning committee, I think the custom's been established well by Peter O'Brien, the co-chair, that we welcome the members of the public to the planning committee. There is a drinks machine outside if at any point you feel you would like to have a drink. There's also a toilet if you turn left and then right. Other than that, in terms of fire regs, that if an alarm does go, then we do access through those doors there and the way that you came in as soon as possible. Do not use the lift at all. Okay, we will commence the agenda then, and first of all, apologies for absence, please.
Thank you, Chair. I've got apologies here from Councillor Butcher and Councillor Hughes.
Are there any further apologies, please, that need to be recorded? No. In that case, number 2, approval of minutes of the previous meeting. I have to inform members they are not at the moment available because of a variety of circumstances, but will appear and presented at the next full planning committee meeting. So the minutes for June are still at the moment in abeyance. So if that could be noted, please. In terms of interests, are there any interests at this point members feel it's necessary to declare, please? No? Then we will move then to our first application on the agenda. That is found on page 11. We're looking at land off Thatcher's Croft, Thatcher's Lane, Tansley. Sean, at this point, do we have the speakers first? And yeah, so I'll invite the agent, Richard Piggott, please. You've got 5 minutes, Richard, pertaining this particular application. If you'd like to convey your comments to the committee, please.
Thank you, Chairman, for the opportunity to speak this evening. I will try to keep this as succinct even as possible and start by addressing the three reasons for the deferral of the application. Firstly, related to highways adoption. Thatcher's Croft is a new cul-de-sac leading off Thatcher's Lane. It has been constructed in phases during the progression of the Thatcher's Croft development. The road is constructed to an adoptable standard, and the road will be transferred into the ownership of the management company on completion of this development. Each property owner will contribute annually, and this will fund the maintenance of the road and communal areas. The road will be owned by Thatcher's Croft (Tansley) Management Company Limited, with each homeowner a shareholder. The company will become active at the point of the road and communal areas being transferred into the management company, and at this point annual service charges will become due. This is very common on many developments within the UK and is now used to manage roads on the majority of new developments of this size. Secondly, relating to landscape and the size of the garden. Concerns were previously raised about the size of the rear garden. However, this area is larger than the one approved for this plot on the hybrid planning application, as is confirmed in the officer update. Landscaping is now completed, including the planting of native tree species, 15 linear metres of beech hedge and other shrubs. Thirdly, just related to the Section 106 legal agreement. An agreement is in place for the hybrid planning application. The variation is to link each full planning application on this site to the original S106. A draft was quickly agreed between the developers and the council solicitors, but there was some back and forth over minor legal issues. Approval has now been received by the council, and the document can now be signed by all parties. Just to touch on a few wider points of which I would just like you to consider as well. The site has been part of the council's local plan since 2017, and its development is helping to meet the housing needs of the area, both for open market and affordable housing. You will have seen on your site visit yesterday that the site is being constructed to a high standard with high quality local materials in accordance with the designs of a renowned local firm of architects. The applicant employs local builders and tradesmen, all of whom are based in the district or adjoining districts, and the applicant also employs 3 apprentices, all of whom are gaining valuable on-the-job learning alongside their studies. In summary, I trust you now have the information and confidence you need to approve the application. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Biggott, for your comments. I think it was very useful that this was one of our site visits yesterday and did enable all the members present to fully appreciate the application. And as members will note, the application is down, offers a recommendation of approval. I'd like to bring in, please, Sean Robson, the interim planning manager. Please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Basically, members will be aware from the site visit yesterday the actual physicalities of the site. This application was deferred on the committee on the 9th of April of this year for 3 reasons, which the applicant's agent has just outlined. But I just want to draw members' attention to the information in front of them that I've provided. This just shows or just reiterates the actual extent of the highway ownership. As you can see from the actual plan in front of members, the green area delineates the extent on which the highway is adopted, and as identified by the applicant's agent and within the committee update report, that the extent of Thatcher's Croft itself will be run by a private management company. To adopt the roads themselves and the highway and footpath and the community areas to be an adoptable standard, however, that will be run by a management company as outlined by the applicant's agent. In terms of the other reasons for the deferral, the issue of the potential removal of the garage and to create a larger amenity space, as members will have observed, and one of the points I was quite keen to point out on the site visit, the site itself is actually the garden area, the rear garden area, rear amenity area, is actually bigger than what was originally approved in the original application, the hybrid scheme, which this application formed a full permission part of that. And then just finally, in terms of the Section 106s, those applications that have come forward, there's still the original parent application, 106, that relates to the hybrid application. There's been 2 applications, this being one of those, so 3 applications that have subsequently varied that 106, which effectively all it means is just it opens up the 106 and includes these plots, these revised designs within that requirement. So there's still the requirement of the 106. The contributions are still there, those that have been altered. It's just that the 106 are being updated. And yes, there has been a delay longer than what we would have hoped, the council would have hoped, in terms of getting those 106, but those minutiae of detail have now been resolved. I wasn't intending to take members through the report in full, but I will just take members through the slides that were originally presented on the 9th of April. So if I can draw members' attention to the slide. The plot number 11 is the one to the bottom of the screen. This is the plot and the elevations of the dwelling as built, or part built, or almost completed. This was taken from Thatcher's, bear with me, Thatcher's Lane to the rear of the actual site, looking down at the actual site itself. Active building site, and that's basically it, Chair. I'm welcome to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. This section is for questions, please, members. So please be as specific as you can with your questions, and then later we can listen to your comments and have the open debate. So are there any specific questions at this point? Councillor Dobbs.
Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify, in terms of the adoption, the pavements that surround the development on both the A615 and indeed on Thatcher's Lane, they are not being adopted. Is that correct?
What won't be adopted is effectively what you can see in that plan that I've given members to look at. As the actual road comes off Thatcher's Lane into Thatcher's Croft, so where it adjoins or butts Thatcher's Lane, for that extent going into the site to this particular development and the remaining units on the site, that's what won't be formally adopted by the County Council. It'll be adopted by the management company.
And just to clarify, on the 615, the main road, as it were, that's shown not in green, so that's not adopted, is that right?
That's what this plan would actually indicate. I'll have to seek clarification from the highways on that, whether or not that green line should be extended slightly, but this has come directly from the County Council.
Any further questions from members? If not, Councillor O'Brien.
Yeah, it's just a question, Sean, on proposed condition 4. This is the removal of permitted development rights. Does this mean that if any resident or future residents want to, say, erect solar panels or put a heat source pump in their garden, or in fact erect a greenhouse, they are going to have to apply for planning permission?
Sorry, through you, Chair. With regard to the solar panels, they aren't covered by this because it doesn't relate to any alterations to the actual... It doesn't specifically say roof, it says dwelling, so you could argue that yes, a solar panel would need permission for that. But certainly a shed or a greenhouse, that would need permission, yes. There would be no fee associated with that because it would be permitted development otherwise, but certainly we would need an application for that purpose.
Councillor Slack.
Thank you, Chair. Sean, is there a move by the Derbyshire County Council to move away from adopting roads on new developments, or is it just this one development?
Through you, Chair.
Yeah.
I haven't had that conversation with the County Council. I do know that this does seem to become quite a commonality with the local authorities throughout the length and breadth of the land, whether it's the two-tier systems that we've got or some unitary authorities have adopted this approach as well.
Yeah.
But certainly I don't have any information to say whether or not the County Council, Derbyshire County Council, is actually moving towards this or not.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Maelstrom.
Thank you. At 7.5, just regarding the hedges, Sean, I see that it's not considered fundamental to the quality of the development that a hedge is replanted, but is it open to the committee to condition replanting of hedges if we were so minded?
That's something members could consider, yes.
If there are no further questions, we have an officer recommendation before us. Does any member feel able at this point, so we can actually have a debate, to move or second, or Councillor Slack?
Yeah, I'd like to move this, Chair. I think it's a very high quality development, and I can see great advantages for this to be approved.
Thank you, Councillor Slack. Does that find a seconder, Councillor Maelstrom? Thank you.
Sorry, just to clarify, could I second that and add a condition with regard to replanting of hedges, or would that constitute an amendment?
Yep.
No, that's something we could do, Councillor. That's a part of the actual consideration.
Yeah.
But just so members are aware, the recommendation is defer the actual decision for the alteration to the 106 and then issue the decision. So,
Oh, beg your pardon, I thought I misunderstood. I thought
Sorry,
the recommendation was
no.
to approve with officer delegation.
office delegation to approve those revisions on the 106. So yes, if you wanted to add that condition you mentioned about landscaping, that's something that we could, if members were to vote on that, something that could be included.
Are you happy to incorporate that, Councillor Slack? Excellent.
I am, Chair, yeah.
Excellent. Lovely. Open now. 8 members. If not, can we then take a vote? I don't want to rush things, but so it's been moved and seconded. All those in favour of the officer recommendation with also the insertion of the hedges, please. Will you indicate? And that appears to be unanimous. There's no one against, is there? No abstentions. So that is unanimous. Thank you. So we move now to page 21, to the second application, Turner's Croft, Thatcher's Lane, Tansley. And I'll invite again Mr. Piggott, please, if you'll address the committee.
Thank you again, Chairman. So this application relates to plot 17 of the development, approved as part of the hybrid application. Planning approval was granted for the construction of a bungalow on this site, with access, scale, landscaping and layout all approved. This application is a full application to cover the detailed design, but also the layout has been modified. The owners of Ash Tree Cottage are immediately adjacent to the development and strongly objected to the approved scheme. The applicant has worked very closely with the owners to agree a scheme that is set significantly below the level of Ash Tree Cottage, thus ensuring that their outlook over the top of the new dwelling will be maintained. The proposal will not be detrimental to them, and they are now fully supportive of the scheme, as confirmed in both the letter of support and their attendance at the site visit yesterday. Access to the site off Thatcher's Lane was agreed at that stage, as it was considered that any additional vehicle movements would not have a material impact. In addition to the above, I would reiterate that this site is supported in the local plan. It will have obvious economic and social benefits, and there are no other contentious matters arising. I trust you can support this application. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Mr Piggott, and I'll invite Sean, please, to outline the application.
Yes, thank you, Chair. If I could draw members' attention to the presentation, this is a little bit more in-depth than the previous one. The plot in question is the one towards the bottom left of the screen, as I'm looking directly at the screen in front of me. This is just the elevation showing the actual bungalow in question, and as has already been outlined, this is the subject of discussions with a neighbouring property to achieve the best form of design for members to consider. Sorry, my apologies. There aren't any photographs of this particular site, but members will recall that this site, or we conducted our site visit yesterday, is the only site within the wider actual development itself that will be accessed from Thatcher's Croft rather than it going through, Thatcher's Lane, my apologies, rather than going Thatcher's Croft. So this is access, as can be seen on this plan here, directly onto Thatcher's Lane rather than through Thatcher's Croft. So it's slightly different to the previous application, the fact it won't form part of the management company. This is an adoptable highway. Highways haven't objected to the application. And open to taking questions, Chair.
Thank you. Questions, members? We visited this yesterday. Councillor Burfoot, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think I'm correct in saying, this is a question to Sean, that Derbyshire County Council originally didn't recommend any other additional entry points onto Thatcher's Lane, which is single track. They appear now to have removed that objection, but I notice under 5.2 on page 24 that it says conditions of approval are recommended. Could you just outline what they are?
Yes, sir, thank you. Through you, Chair. Yes, the conditions itself, the condition that actual highways have asked for is condition number 3 on page 26 of the agenda.
Can you just give me the number?
Sorry, the number. So
Under the recommendation.
It's condition number 3 and condition number 4 relate to what highways have asked for. So basically, they've asked for the development not be occupied until the access gets them in setback 5 metres from the adjoining highway, i.e. Thatcher's Lane. And then there's it shall be approved in accordance with one of the plans that accompanies the application, plan number P49.
Right. So basically, that's saying that any gate or anything that happens to be put in has to open inwards, so it won't open onto Thatcher's Lane itself.
That's correct, yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Buttle.
Thanks. I guess this is a slightly bonkers question, but what difference does it make having an integral garage? Like, does the fact that do planners take a different attitude to the amount of external space that's laid out to hard standing, what have you, if you put a garage inside, or is it just like a fashion statement?
It's a very interesting question, Councillor. I would say it's probably neither. I mean, basically, when you're looking at certainly accessing or assessing an application, you look at the number of parking spaces that have been provided. When some authorities have a strict number, thou shalt provide X amount of property space and so forth, and the garage space is counted as one or another. Now, I think integral garages, that's still a thing. I've got one myself. I think it's just a case of it's how it's built. It takes up less built form within the actual plot. So when you've got such as this, a bungalow, which detached bungalows themselves are very much, take up much more land than a dwelling house would be, which is the sheer footprint of the property. It tends to be, not all cases, but tends to be, you might get a lot more integral garages with a bungalow than you would with necessarily with a dwelling house. So it could be probably the latter statement you made, maybe more of a fashion statement, or just sheer practicality. Just
most people don't even keep a car in them, so yeah, like it's
very, very nice storage rooms.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Any further questions? If not, as with the previous application, I need a mover and a seconder in terms of the officer recommendation, or to the contrary. Councillor Franks. It's been moved to Councillor Maelstrom, thank you.
And same again with the hedges?
Sean?
The same paragraph appears in this report.
Yes, it did indeed, yes. I mean, if that's something members would like, then yes, that's something we would add.
Does that find excellent? There were, yes, yeah. Any further comments from members? In that case, then let's put it to the vote. All those in favour of the motion, please show. Against? Abstentions? That is unanimous. Thank you, members. We turn then to page 31. This application pertains Russett's 2B Wyston Road, Ashbourne. Again, we visited this site yesterday. Members will have obviously read the officer recommendation. Now, we do have Mr. Philip Marsh, a local resident. Philip, if you'd like to come and address the committee, you have 3 minutes, and I'll leave it to you when you're ready.
Okay, thank you all. I'd like to draw the committee's attention to the officer's appraisal in her report to paragraphs 76, 77, 78 in the policy HC10. I disagree with all their comments, and the proposed extension or development, in my opinion, does not meet these policy requirements with regard to height, form, design or character of the property. Because of the rotation of the property, the original design was approved with a single-storey garage at the side of the property for that reason, so that it doesn't increase on my property at number 12. And that was obviously because of the height and blocking any light and sunlight of winter sun. I wouldn't get if it's a 2-storey extension. There's been no precedent set in the area or on the Shire's estate, which was part of that development, for 2-storey properties to be extended. And the only ones that have been done are single-storey. A single-storey extension would be acceptable to me and any other objectors that were close to me, and this will be more appropriate. My other concern is, should any approval go ahead, is just the dust from the development, if that could be kept to a minimum, because I have a lung disease and it causes me serious problems. And also, if a 2-storey extension is given, it would enclose my property so much, I think it would affect the mental health of my wife. The only final thing is the large sycamore tree that they recommend cutting down. I don't see that there's any structural damage, and I don't see why it should be felled. I'm sure it could be treated and monitored, and all the remaining hedges should be stayed in place, because it's a lot of wildlife and birds nesting in those hedges. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Marsh. Can I just ask members to have a look, please, on the sheet correspondence received after the preparation of the agenda? It's important we just look at those comments on the front pertaining this application, please. you'd like to raise this business.
This hedge.
The ransom strip.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll invite now Sean, please, to...
Sorry, Chair.
It's okay.
So if I can draw members' attention to the presentation, then I'll go through the actual report and some of the points in there. Excuse me. This is an application for a single-storey and two-storey extension to a property on the west side of Wyeston Road in Ashbourne. Members will recall that they had the opportunity to conduct a site visit as of yesterday on a particular site. The site is the area that's actually greyed out on that ordnance survey plan extract. It's the site outlined in red on this particular slide. The two the two plans here were those that were actually members' attention was drawn to on the site visit. So effectively, as I'm looking directly at the area, the smaller footprint to the left that's got conservatory that comes off the rear elevation, that's the property as built with the detached garage. And the proposal relates to the extent of the development to the right drawing on that site. So a new garage effectively moved forward, and in the stead of the garage in its footprint, not its entire footprint, but the majority of it, there is a two-storey and single-storey extension to go within that area. Members will recall we also had an opportunity to go around to the objectors, one of the objectors' properties to the rear, to see the extent of the height of the actual proposed extension in relation to the rear boundary. So this basically shows the development again in general. This is the elevation of the existing property with the attached garage. This just shows the internal footprint, also internal plans of the existing property. And this just shows the extent of the extensions to the property as it is at the moment, has been proposed. And this just shows the internal layout of the actual dwelling. There's some photographs. This is the front elevation of the property as it stands at this moment in time. This is the garage, as mentioned, to the side. You can just see beyond the garage, that's the actual fence that's with the properties affected, the neighbours have objected to the property development beyond. This just shows part of the rear elevation of the property looking back towards the house with the conservatory. Members will have obviously read the actual update in the agenda pages, and that's it, Chair. Any further questions?
Thank you very much, Sean.
Thank you.
Councillor Dobbs, then Councillor O'Brien. Councillor Dobbs.
Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify, Sean, the first slide you showed up is not the application, is it? That's the one that's been superseded. It doesn't have the garage, does it now?
No, it does not.
No. Okay, thank you. Just looking at the dates and the comments from DCC Highways, they must have commented on the first version rather than the amended. And does that matter? And if I can go on just relating to that, I note that the officer's report points us to two areas, character and appearance and design and scale, but in terms of the correspondence, comments are also made on parking and surface water. Are your thoughts that those would not be material considerations in this case?
Sean. Yep.
Sorry, Chair, just actually drawing my thoughts. Yes, in terms of the chronological order of the application, yes, the highways have commented on the original scheme that had the garage included. The deletion of those comments have not been received as of yet from the County Council. That just certainly needs to be weighed in the round. In terms of the, just forgive me, Councillor, the issues in terms of the massing, size, bulking, and what was the other point, you mentioned?
Sorry, it's just that attention has been drawn and reasons highlighted weighing up these considerations, character and appearance, design and scale, PD1, HC10 area, but no mention of things that people who wrote in and objected did mention. For example, parking, surface water. Do we draw from that it's officers' opinion that those are not going to be significant?
That's correct, yes.
Councillor O'Brien.
Sean, just to clarify, can you confirm that underpinning our local plans approach to design in the Derbyshire Dales is a commitment to ensuring that a development, whether it's a housing estate or individual extensions, respect the character and appearance of the local neighbourhoods? Is that an underpinning principle of our approach to planning?
Yes, it is, Councillor.
Councillor Rob Archer.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of questions. First one, in terms of these sorts of cases, as much for the public as for us, is it always the case that an officer would visit this site and go and stand in neighbours' gardens and assess those sort of things, or would they be making a recommendation based purely on a sort of a paper exercise, a map exercise? That's the first question.
Sorry, I think you're Chair to come back on that point. Yes, officers do visit the site, do conduct their site visit. It's not uncommon for them to go onto any neighbours' properties, obviously if they can gain access to those properties, or if they can see from, for example, if it's an adjoining a road or street and so forth, if they can see glimpses of the property from there and assume what that impact is going to be, then that's what's done. If there happens to be a footpath that runs between the two properties in question, if they can gain access to that footpath, then they can make that judgment there. But certainly there is a site visit that is conducted and the opinions formed on that. It's not a desktop exercise.
Lovely, thank you. And the second question is about, in the report 7.8, it refers to impact on residential amenity and reaches a judgment that the loss of light is not deemed to be sufficient in terms of the amount of loss to go against, to turn the application down. So in terms of when you make a judgment call on impact on residential amenity, that is one area of planning that I understand it is a subjective area to an extent, particularly on light. So what guidance could you give us in terms of how you make a judgment on whether or not a loss of light is enough to turn an application down or not? Is it literally just a judgment call? How should we be guided on that sort of subjective decision?
I mean, through you, Chair, I mean, yes, it is subjective. It always is. It's not always, but some things are. It does become a little bit less subjective if, for example, I'll give you an example. If you've got a bungalow and smack bang against that bounded bungalow, you're putting up a 3 or 4 storey property, then obviously that's clearly going to have an impact on that bungalow. However, subject to the distances from boundaries, shared boundaries, orientation of those extensions, so obviously the path in which the sun's path around the actual site and so forth, those are the things that we tend to consider, and obviously what existing or current boundary features exist, but obviously whether to go, is that still an opinion that an officer would form? So it's all weighed in the round in the balance, and that tends to form the actual report that's put in front of members to consider.
Did you indicate, Peter, and then it's Councillor Lees, please.
Sean, is pre-planning advice available now, or is it still not available?
Yes, that came back as the 1st of this month.
Yeah, so there have been pre-planning advice on this application?
Not necessarily, no. I mean, normally with residential extensions alterations, you don't normally have an applicant enter into pre-application advice on there. It tends to be single dwellings, commercial extensions, alterations, or large-scale developments.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Lees.
Thank you, Chair. That was one of my questions as well about the pre-planning advice. Also, with this new application, or the amended application, should I say, are we quite happy that we've got sufficient parking with this being made into a larger dwelling? And Wyston Road is a very busy road if we've got vehicles starting backing out onto Wyston Road. And it didn't look to be very much parking space as now without the extension, so just concern on the parking.
That was the unbalanced consideration the officer considered when forming the actual opinion as they have. I mean, again, were members to feel contrary to that, then obviously that's something we'd have to consider.
Thank you.
Councillor Sue Burfoot.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just ask about if Sean could just explain the significance of this ransom strip of land? It wasn't sort of obvious when we were there what exactly this was, and particularly appertaining to this really high hedge that I'm not really sure whose ownership that's in, and if this committee were minded to approve this application, who would have to get permission if they wanted to remove this hedge as something that they might want to do? I'm really not clear what we're meaning by this ransom strip.
The whole concept of, where the ransom strip comes from, it tends to be if you've got a developer or original landowner that wants to retain the ownership of a piece of land, so at some point they can actually perhaps use it in discussions or negotiations when looking at disposal of land or assets. Now, sometimes when you have housing developments built, you may get at the odd small areas or strips of land that basically didn't form part of the original planning application, nor did it form part of the garden or curtilage of the properties built. And therefore, the legal term for it is a ransom strip, is owned by a third party, or parties. In terms of if there is something growing in this particular instance in that ransom strip, then that, in order to do that, unfortunately I can't bring in legal colleagues this evening, but they would have to obtain permission from the actual owner or owners of that land to remove something that is growing on that land. I mean, you can chop back a tree you can remove overhanging limbs or branches of a hedge or a tree if that's within your curtilage. But obviously removing of that, entering that land to remove that tree or hedge is something that planning doesn't, the granting of planning permission would allow, nor would we would encourage as an authority for someone to do that.
Any further questions? Councillor Buttle.
Thank you, yeah. I'm sort of coming at it from the same direction. I'm wondering about, like, if I owned the house that the applicant's owning and doing, you'd have access to the garden round the far edge of the garage that's going to be replaced by a new building because there's no space around the front. So you'd expect that space to be a used, I don't know, a causeway or something, somewhere to take a wheelbarrow, whatever it is you're doing. And there's a hedge to one side which provides some cover for the objectors. Are we confident that the hedge, which is lovely, I wouldn't like to see that go, that the hedge is not in the applicant's control? And can we ask for a wall to be put along that edge so that if it will always provide some shelter for is it Mr. Marsh?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I've forgotten his name. Yes, Mr. Marsh.
Sorry, through you, Chair, if I can. I'll take the response to those. Sorry, if you don't mind, Councillor, I'll come back on those points slightly out of order. In terms of, in terms of the imposition or requirement for a boundary feature to be installed, I mean, that's something we can impose where an application to be approved. The members can ask for that to go on the actual site. The boundary details or features, enclosure features, are agreed in writing, whether that's a fence or a wall or an appropriate mode of material to allow that privacy screen. In terms of the actual hedge itself and the position of that, I know obviously it formed part of the debate on the site meeting. And from speaking to colleagues today, or when I've been in and out of other things today, we couldn't actually ascertain how much of that is actually within the applicant's ownership or not. It's very much, unfortunately, it's very much a grey area.
Thank you.
If there are no further questions, the officer recommendation is for approval. I suspect we're going to have a debate. Councillor Archer.
I would like to move against officer recommendation on this one, please. Reasons being that, my question may have sort of indicated where I was heading with this. I think unless you've actually been and stood in the garden of the neighbour, it's difficult to make a proper judgment on the impacts on residential amenity in relation to light. When you think about the aspect of the property, the direction it looks, the way their garden faces and where the sunlight is coming from, and the fact that the house is positioned lower, the neighbour's house is positioned lower than the applicant's house, I think a two-storey extension in that situation, in my judgment, as a subjective judgment, I recognise that, is that it would have a significant impact on the residential amenity of the neighbour for the reasons I outlined just there. And I suspect the officer, when they visited, did their best to get an idea of that, but unless they were actually in the garden, I think they would struggle to see the true impact. So my primary reason for recommending that we go against officer recommendation and refuse this is that I think it does have a significant impact on residential amenity in relation to light in the garden of the neighbour. I do think there's two potential other issues as well. I think Councillor O'Brien's questioning about the character of the property could be something else that could be explored as a reason for refusal, and I also feel the size of this development on that plot and in this area, in terms of how it compares to other buildings in the area, is potentially an overdevelopment. But my primary reason would be, from my opinion, that the judgment that residential amenity is significantly impacted. And I think it would be far more sensible to be looking at a single-storey extension, not a two-storey extension.
It's been moved by Councillor Archer, refusal. Does that find a seconder? Councillor Lees?
Yes, Chair, I had exactly the same comments as what Councillor Archer has brought up, and I'd just like to add about the parking as well, which is a concern as well, backing onto Old Derby Road. It's not Old Derby Road, onto Wyston Road. It's quite a dangerous road, and going back to what Councillor Buttle brought up about the wall, that is part of the issue. There would be a 4.2 metre wall high, so no need to move the edge at all. So that would already, it is too high. Yeah. Echo exactly the same thoughts as Councillor Archer, and I second it.
We'll open the debate. Councillor O'Brien and then Councillor Peacock.
Well, that was the order.
Yep. Yeah. Sorry. Peter.
Well, I agree very much with the comments made by my two colleagues here. I think that the proposal as submitted would represent quite a fundamental change to the character of the neighbourhood. It's a very well designed estate, and I think it's the changing character which itself is producing the adverse impacts on the neighbours. I think that is the principle, and what I think. If this proposal were allowed to go through, I can see it resulting in other similar proposals coming forward, and the character of this estate would change fundamentally, and it would, I think, no longer be an exemplar in the Derbyshire Dales. I think it would become something which in future years we would not look back on with pride. What I do think, though, is that there is a scheme here, which a more modest scheme, which could be implemented, and what I'm suggesting is perhaps it may be more productive to if you like, defer with mindful that the committee, defer on the basis that the committee is mindful to refuse the application, and to see if negotiations could take place with the applicant to come forward with a scheme which our officers feel would be more acceptable to the committee. If that doesn't come forward, then our officers are given delegated authority to refuse the application. But as I say, I do think a more modest scheme could be made acceptable. It may even be a scheme that will be within permitted development rights, so it wouldn't need planning consent. So that would be my, perhaps like an officer comment, that if we allowed an opportunity for further negotiation with the applicant. If that officers didn't find that productive, they would refuse the application as proposed. If they felt something more acceptable come forward, which reflected the concerns of colleagues, then they'd bring it back to committee.
Can I just ask, does the mover and seconder wish to go down that route, or?
I think it might be clearer to say no and ask for a resubmission, but I'm more than happy to listen to what officer advice is.
Okay.
I think we'll probably end up at the same place. I think a single story is more acceptable. I think that's probably what Councillor O'Brien's saying too.
Yeah.
But in terms of the process, I think it might be clearer to just reject, refuse and then go again, but I'm happy to take advice.
Sean?
Yes, through you, Chair. I mean, it would be easier, more straightforward and give more certainty to the applicant to refuse the application. And just speaking to that point before I come back to you, Councillor O'Brien, in terms of what I've heard from a member saying in the room this evening, I mean, certainly policy PD1 and policy HC10, and there are at least 3 bullet points under policy PD1 and 2 of the sub-criteria under HC10 that can be adapted to reflect this. I mean, for example, we seek to achieve by requiring development of a high design that respects the character, identity and context of Derbyshire Dales townscapes and landscapes. We would effectively say it is considered, this development, in the current 2-storey and single-storey form, does not reflect that. There is the requiring that the development contributes positively to the area's character, history and identity in terms of its scale, height, density, layout, appearance, and its relationship to adjacent buildings and landscapes. So we would say it wouldn't comply with that. And then finally, the criteria here requiring that the development contributes positively to the areas. That further already. The development shows satisfactory relationship to adjacent development and does not cause unacceptable effects by reason of visual intrusion, overlooking, shadowing, overbearing effects, noise pollution, and so forth. So we would say, but not all of those points, but some of those. This does not, or is considered not to. And then under policy HC10, 3 criteria, A, B, and C. B, developments or extension will be approved when these criteria are met. And B is that the height, scale, design of the extension or building is in keeping with the scale character of the original dwelling and takes account of cumulative additions to the wider area and the location. So we'll be saying it does not reflect those points. This, if members were to go with this point. And then that the plot itself is not. I believe that this results in an overdevelopment of the size of the actual plot by the 2-storey and single-storey extension. Just food for thought. Certainly, going back onto the first question that was asked by Councillor O'Brien, there's nothing to stop us entering into discussions with the applicant. However, they may well simply say we wanted to determine the application as it is, which will get back to this point we just discussed, which Councillor O'Brien outlined, that if the applicant doesn't want to do that, we could simply move, or if members minded to, allow that flexibility to refuse the application if those discussions aren't fruitful. If the applicant chooses to rework the actual application, that will be subject to a further consultation exercise, so all neighbours and the parish council will be notified on that, and that may well obviously come back to, probably preferable in this instance, I would suggest, even if were it not to be called in, I would use the powers delegated to myself to refer it in front of members again, because of the history or because of this evening. So it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, basically.
Can I bring in now Councillor Slack and then Councillor Peacock, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, visiting the site yesterday, it immediately struck me that this property with a double extension in that particular area would be very dominant in this area, and it could well set a precedent for a similar property to do the same. If the edge, we don't know whose ownership it is really, but if it was removed, they'd have a big blank, the neighbour would have a gigantic blank gable looking at them, and I think it's out of character of the area totally. I was hoping if there'd been pre-planning advice, we could advise them to go for a single extension, which would be more in keeping with the area, and the neighbours would accept that better. So whether it differs or whether it goes to refuse it completely, I think we should probably refuse it completely so we can start again, and because it's not a tiny thing, it's either a single story or double story, so it's not a little alteration, it's a big alteration, so I think it should be refused. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Peter. Councillor Peacock.
I just wanted to say that I feel intensely disadvantaged because I wasn't able to go on the site visit because I was at work. So therefore, I think, unless somebody else who was on the site visit can convince me otherwise, I think I will abstain on this one. I was going to ask if in future there's something that we can, we're in a world of virtual everything now. Would it be possible, because I feel that I can't judge either the night issue or whether it's because I haven't seen the character of the rest of the estate, so how do I know if it's in character? Do you know what I mean? Can we have more information if we don't go on the visits so that I could make a decision on that?
Sorry, through you, Chair. So what further information? I mean, obviously it's...
Well, I mean a video. Or more photos of the surrounding area, because there's photos here, but they're of the house. So I don't know if it's in keeping. Do you see what I mean?
I can certainly ask officers to start taking more photographs of the street, seeing the surrounding areas and so forth, that will be put online for people to view.
Yeah.
There is a capability on the phones, or the refreshed phones that we've received, that you can take a video, so that's something that I can certainly consider.
It was just a suggestion that was in my head then because of this, and but as I say, I think Councillor Archer is right. I think you probably do have to be there to fully appreciate what the effect's going to be, and therefore I can't make a decision.
Thank you for those comments. Councillor Dobbs.
Thank you, Chair. Just 3 points just to reinforce. I did a quick check. There are no two-storey extensions on the shires of this size so far. There are one or two stories, but they are modest and probably were within permitted development rights. Secondly, something I missed until later on, a significant portion of this house is going to be off-white render. This is in a predominantly brick part of the shires. That is very much the character of the immediate area, and indeed the whole of the shires until you get halfway down Premier Avenue. And the third point is that absolutely, if we could have had a visualisation of how this this white end would have looked from 12 Duncombe Drive, I think probably we would have come to a very quick decision, which is probably where we're going to go anyway, but that would have been helpful. And I think these things can be knocked out, visualisations of something as straightforward as a gable end, I suppose, would have helped. So maybe that would have helped Councillor Peacock.
Yeah.
Whilst it does speak to this application, it's just something food for thought for members. I know we are in the process I'm in the process of just writing the local validation checklist. One of those things that we could consider, obviously it will be for members just to go through as well, just to take on board. One of those things that I know a lot of authorities do ask for on extensions, alterations, are visualisations. Just food for thought.
And finally, Councillor Sue Burfoot.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I think it's really important, actually, that we do make a decision on this application. It has come in front of us as an application, and I think we need to make that decision. I agree with lots of things that have been said tonight. I do think you really needed to have to see this to sort of get in your mind what the significance of this double-storey extension might be to the neighbours. We've got this big hedge, which, if for whatever reason was to be cut down, and that seems to be sort of up for debate whether they could do that, then the actual structure that's been proposed would be even more overbearing to those neighbours. So I go along with the proposal to refuse for the reasons given. Thank you.
Members, it's been moved by Councillor Archer and seconded by Councillor Lees that we go for a refusal on this application. All those in favour, please show. Against, and we note the abstention of Councillor Peacock. Yeah, so therefore the application is refused. Thank you. We turn then to the final application, which is on page 41, land west of Starkholmes Road, Matlock. This was our final site visit yesterday, and the application has an officer recommendation of refusal. Perhaps just before I bring in the applicant's agent, can I again bring to the attention of members, if we just quickly please take on board the comments we've received here and the officer response. So I'd like to invite now the agent, Maggie Boardman. You've got 5 minutes to address the committee.
Good evening, my name is Maggie Boardman of Spring Planning. We are the agents for this application. The starting point for the scheme was the preparation of a landscape and visual appraisal by specialist consultants Weddells. This informed the position and design of the proposed dwelling to minimise its visibility, along with the introduction of a planting strategy. Their final appraisal is submitted with the application. This concludes that any long-term landscape impacts would be negligible. This lack of landscape and visual impact is also reflected in the comments from the Derwent Valley Mills World Heritage team, who had no comments to make on the proposals. The site is not located in a conservation area, but is adjacent to the Matlock Bath Conservation Area. The area which lies below the site is the Starkholmes Meadows, which provide the setting to the main part of this conservation area. Historically, a decision was taken by the council to exclude the application site from the conservation area, presumably as this forms part of the built-up area of Starkholmes. The officer report suggests that the site is not brownfield land. However, it had a building on it until 1965. We do have a photo of this if it would be useful to see. There is still evidence of the former school on the site, with the playground, gates and areas of hard standing remaining. This is a site which has previously had a building on it. It is not a greenfield site. The site is located on the edge of a first-tier settlement, the priority location for new housing. The officer report makes no reference to Policy S4, which states that when the council has no 5-year housing supply in place, development on non-allocated sites on the edge of defined settlement development boundaries of first-tier settlements will be supported. The principle of development is therefore clearly acceptable. In other applications, the delivery of a single dwelling has been given significant weight by officers in the planning balance. There are no highway or amenity issues associated with the proposals, and the structural advice has been sought on the foundation system for the house. There are significant benefits of this scheme. It's a high-quality design, which the MPPF strongly encourages. Sustainability credentials and the 46% improvement in biodiversity net gain. The proposals would also provide a new self or custom-built home. helping the council to achieve their targets. Lastly, the proposals are not a holiday let, as referenced for the reason for refusal, but a permanent home. For these reasons, we would urge the committee to reconsider the officer recommendation and approve the application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, Sean, if you'd like to please outline the application.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Members will recall from the site visits that when we approached the site, it obviously overlooks the actual valley onto Matlock Baths. The application site, or the proposal, relates the areas outlined on the screen in front of you. As you can see, parking spaces for at least three cars even, and a more modern design property on the majority of the site. A lot of these plans members will probably recall from the site visit, but if we can just go through them again. So you look at quite a modern design property built onto the actual road edge of the site. And members will note that there was obviously the wall itself, the gates of the frontage, and what was left of the car park is the remnants of the old school that was on the site. So this is further plans of the actual elevations in question. And this just shows the actual street scene in relation to the bottom drawing shows the actual looking toward the actual site as you approach the site, so the dwellings on the right, and the existing properties that exist to the left of the actual road. And these just are the cross sections that show the site in relation to the surrounding area. And again, just some internal plans show the 4-bedroom property. Excuse me. These photographs just illustrate the actual site from the site was yesterday. So you've got the gates and the remnants of the wall from what was the old school. This is a shot just looking over the valley, and this is the wall at the rear of the site, application site. This is back, so you're back to the actual site, looking back up the hill, so other existing properties. And this is just pretty much where the coach parked yesterday, looking back towards the site. The site's on the left. You can just see the wall on the left. Thank you, Chair.
Questions from members, please, at this point? If Councillor Slack.
I'm a little bit puzzled because it's supposed to be outside the settlement boundary, yet there was a school there originally. So was that before the settlement, the local plan was devised? Was that way back?
Yes, the school is quite a historic, significantly older building, yes.
Yes, so it isn't a part of the... No. Thank you, Sean.
Councillor Burfoot, question?
Yes, please. Thank you, Chair. Can I ask Sean, has the instability of that site been considered, given that it's, to all accounts, still an active landslip area? So is that something we can consider as a material planning consideration when we make our decision?
The application has been accompanied by information that the officers have taken or waiting around to do with the proposed design of the foundations for the actual proposed unit going back on the site, which will take account of the actual site itself. Now, what officers haven't done is ask for any structural stability or further report on the particular site, because it's a principal question in terms of the direction of travel of the application and the report as read. So therefore, it's not always the case that officers will ask for all the information if there's a principal consideration of the application, i.e. if the application isn't going to be supported or can't be supported in terms of the local plan. So that information hasn't been asked for. But when members if we got to a position where members were minded to support the application, then that is something that certainly I would probably urge a deferral for that information to be sought and ratified before making that decision formally.
Thank you very much, Sean. Councillor Lees.
Thank you, Chair. I think I know the answer, but I'll ask the question anyway. Would your decision still be the same if this would have been a home rather than a holiday let, as stated?
It is a home. It's not a holiday let.
It just states holiday let on that.
That's been corrected as part of their report.
All right. Thank you.
Members, can we... Oh, Peter, please.
Yeah, just a question, Sean, on the note to applicant, note 9.1, where you quite rightly say that there was pre-application engagement with the applicants. Did that I presume, therefore, that didn't result in a agreement between officers and the applicant in a scheme that could be recommended for approval. Am I correct there?
You are correct, yes.
Councillor Buttle.
Thank you very much. This one for you, Sean. Is the external design of this building particularly relevant? Would they get planning permission for some designs and not others? Or does this have a default no thank you because it's outside the settlement boundary and it doesn't matter how glorious their design is?
I'm sure I appreciate, sorry, through your chair, I'm sure I appreciate, Councillor, it's a very difficult question to ask. I mean, we've got this design in front of us, we have to consider this particular design. It would be probably incorrect for us to speculate what may be appropriate to go on the site. So therefore, all I can say is that we're considering the actual scheme as laid out in front of us.
Thank you.
So members, pertaining this application, we have an officer recommendation of refusal. At this point, do I have a mover? Councillor Burfoot. Does that find a seconder, please? Councillor Leers. It's open now for debate, members.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Yep.
Yes, I'm happy to move office recommendation on this one. I think they've got it absolutely correct. And I do think the reasons for refusal are robust. Given on the sheet that we've had, the refusal reasons being amended, I don't think I need to read those out, do I? No. Yet again, I'm afraid I'm quite surprised by the recommendation of Derbyshire County Council Highways following their original concerns. Knowing this area quite well, this is not just about the visibility display. It really isn't. It's about the problems in that part of Starkholmes. I know it's not going to be a reason for refusal, but I'm going to say it anyway. This application would result in more street parking. Now, many of the houses on that part of Starkholmes have got absolutely no frontage. They've got nowhere to park. They have to park on the road. It is a rat run, and it's particularly dangerous for pedestrians. We've got 2 schools in the area, and lots of people, from my knowledge, actually, because of the danger of the road, do not actually walk to school. They get the cars out because the road's so dangerous. So, I'm getting a little point in about Derbyshire County Council and their responses, and I know this is not going to be part of the reason for refusal, but I don't think it needs to be, actually, because the reasons that we've got from the officers are quite robust enough. So, thank you.
Councillor Leers.
Yeah, just echo Councillor Burfoot's comments as well, Chair. It's totally agree with the officers. I think we've got it right this time, so
it's Councillor...
Happy to second it.
Thank you. Councillor Dobbs and then Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Chair. Perfectly happy to support officer recommendations here. I'm slightly unhappy about 1965 as being a sort of, if they fell down then, it's now no longer, and it's had trees growing on it since then, it's now no longer brownfield. I think that might be a very unfortunate path. I can think of a rather significant site close to Ashbourne, which hasn't had an intact building for some time, which we do regard as brownfield.
Thank you. Councillor O'Brien.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I very much support the recommendation and the rationale, but I also like to be fair to all parties when we're considering applications. I've listened carefully to what the agent said and comments by Councillor Buttle, so I would encourage the agent to engage in discussions to reflect on the reasons for refusal and to look at continuing to engage in discussions with our officers.
Thank you, Peter. Councillor Maelstrom.
Thanks. Yeah, just a very small point, really echoing Councillor Peacock's comment on the previous application, really. Particularly when you haven't been able to go to the site inspection, these sorts of little drawings and plans is very difficult to visualise. There's no colour on that. We've got no idea what that building would actually look like when built, or how it would fit in with the views that we see on the photos. So better visualisation really would help.
I think, Co-Chair and Vice Chair, we do support the early comments from Councillor Peacock and yourself, and I think it is something we need to improve upon, please, Sean, if we can. It's been moved and seconded that we go for officer recommendation of refusal for the reasons outlined. All those in favour, please show. Any against? Any abstentions? So that was carried. Thank you, members. That concludes the applications for determination, but I'd like you now to turn with me, please, to the appeals progress reports. If we could just first start off on that, just looking what page, it's I think 56, 57, the actual lists. Is there anything on the lists that any member would like to specifically raise? And then I'd like on the very first inspector's report, bring in Councillor Peter Dobbs. But first of all, is there anything there that members wish at this point to raise to officers? Councillor Lees.
I'd just like to say, looking at this on the appeal that's that we've got noted in front of us, that we can't be getting it all wrong, because quite a lot of these have been dismissed. So I think we're not far out on some of these applications. So.
Thank you. So if we could move then, please, to page 61, I'd like to bring Councillor Dobbs, who invested an awful lot of time, and with others, and I invite you, Peter, to perhaps give us your reflections and views.
Thank you, Chair. This is the one second on the list and refers to Lot 2, Lees Farm, Wyreston Road, Ashbourne. The appeal ruling, as you presumably all know, was in favour of the appellant, Woodall Homes, although costs were not awarded against us. I think you've all been circulated with the statement, and Tommy's got it as well, but I'll read it out. The ruling by the inspector is clearly disappointing. As the councillor who proposed refusing the application, I acknowledge responsibility for the fact that the development will now go ahead as submitted, but with a significant expenditure of time and money by this council in trying to defend the decision. The 8-day inquiry was a sobering experience in which qualifications and performance under cross-examination appeared to carry disproportionate weight. So what lessons can we learn from this case? A key lesson is that there should be a mechanism by which new information, or at least matters that are material but appear not to have been considered, can be responded to in an appropriate manner. Related to this is that information from members of the public must not be overlooked, since they often have the detailed local knowledge that can highlight significant issues. Another lesson is that although we may not be able to have representatives from the statutory consultees of Highways and Lead Local Flood Authority present at planning meetings, the reasons for their conclusions should be clearly set out for the committee to consider. This should include suitable responses to concerns raised during the consultation period. With this in mind, it is clearly unfortunate that at the planning meeting of 15th of December last year, there was no real attempt to explain how concerns over safe access to the site from a narrow road, the cumulative effect on town centre traffic, or the apparent lack of a connection from the proposed pedestrian link onto any adopted pathway were to be addressed. It is also problematic to suggest that an issue can be mitigated by applying appropriate conditions when that issue might not have even been acknowledged. The problem concerning foul and surface water in the application were an example of this. Deferral rather than refusal was an option, but that too required specific grounds, and as we have seen, failure to include all grounds over which there is a concern runs the risk of this being interpreted as tacit acceptance. Also, the combination of a need to have additional information provided, coupled with a concern over other aspects such as design, housing mix, and the detail of biodiversity net gain, made this a situation where none of the three options open to this committee were entirely appropriate. However, we are constrained by the planning framework in its various forms as it currently exists, and we need to find a way forward that allows us to do our job of scrutinising recommendations and making decisions without exposing this council to significant expense. Thank you, colleagues, for listening.
I think that was the least we could do. I think all of us in this room appreciate the time that you invested, Peter. Most of us come here as willing and, as lay people, and you're up against very powerful forces. Peter O'Brien, you were present at the inquiry, this specific one. Is there anything you'd like to add to those comments?
Well, I think I'd echo that. What I've said to Peter is that I don't think he should have any concerns that he put forward a proposal for refusal. This was a refusal agreed by this committee. It was a collective decision, and I too felt that the application as stood was inappropriate, and I can recall at the time saying that I felt there was a design appropriate to that site, but the one before us wasn't it. However, I'd also like to say that Peter, as our chair has said, Peter put a tremendous amount of time and effort, very detailed effort, and really without him, I think we would certainly be faced with a very large cost bill. So I would compliment him for the diligence that he showed. I have to say I was disappointed with the outcome. I have to say I listened to and I was present for a large part of the inquiry, particularly the design side. I was very disappointed at the. I'm careful how I word this. I was very disappointed at the way the planning inspector interpreted the points made by the council's representative. I think they. Well, that's all I'll say. I think I was disappointed at the way she interpreted them.
Yeah.
What I would say is that yes. What I would also say actually, the out of the process we got a more acceptable development, because part of the appeal involved a lot of convoluted negotiations on different aspects of drainage, for example. And they took place between the consultants which the council engaged to help us with the inquiry, and consultants on the appellants. It was a very expensive way of reaching agreement. And it could have been achieved in a different way. I think it could have been achieved perhaps through a deferral and through a different mechanism. But there's a small benefit. It was a very costly exercise, but we have got a more acceptable development. Finally, I hope it won't if I put this committee off taking difficult decisions if we feel that designs and developments are inappropriate.
Thank you, Peter. Councillor Buttle.
It was very, very interesting. It was here, and I sat in the corner there and watched it, and it was fascinating. I've never been to a planning inquiry before, and I learned more sitting watching that than I've learned through any of our training courses, and I think it would be we could benefit enormously by taking that sort of thing quite seriously and turning up for the next one, assuming we have a next one. But nevertheless, Peter was great, and it was a really interesting experience, and I felt like the points that were being made on our behalf were stronger than the points being made by Woodall Homes, but obviously the planning inspector felt differently. Anyway, thank you very much.
No, thank you, Neil. Councillor Peter Dobbs.
Just to come back, you must not run away with the thought that I was very significant in this. Sean had an avalanche of work to do with this and was there for vast periods of time when he would much rather have been doing other things. So yes, and we did have some great people helping us as well, but Sean put in a huge amount of work, which he hadn't bargained for.
Councillor Maelstrom.
Sorry, just very quickly, I just wanted to say thank you actually to Peter for dealing with that, and I think we will realise that there's a lot more to this than we had gleaned from our initial training. So if these learnings can be captured and added to future training for planning committee members, I think that would be very worthwhile.
Members, would I have your support that we do actually put something in the minutes to the effect that, we appreciated Peter's report to us and also the efforts of our officer, Dermot. Yeah.
Thanks, Chair. I sometimes fear for the future of planning, actually, in these committees. We don't take these decisions lightly, do we? No. And it was a collective decision. Yep. Thank you, Peter, for all you did. We're just going to have to be very careful, aren't we, when we go forward? And and we certainly can't afford any more of these events, can we? Really? How much does it really cost us? More than 100,000 that came up at a meeting, probably, that we approved.
I can't speak to exactly the amount. There are still some invoices to receive and to obviously subsequently pay. I believe there will be a paper or some form of confirmation exactly what the end result is, which will, I think, be brought forward, or members that will be made aware of.
But we do the budget, I suspect.
I can't comment on that, I'm afraid.
Councillor Lee is...
Yeah, just to echo them thoughts again, like Councillor O'Brien said, it was a very unfortunate experience, if you like, and it's something I was off myself ill at the time with my knees operation, but I'd have gone down exactly the same route as you went down yourself and Councillor Archer. I'd have gone down that route 100%, but I don't, we shouldn't let this put us off. We should stand by his ground and say. Thank you.
Councillor Boyington.
Chair, I just want to echo those thoughts of both my colleagues there, and I just think we don't need to be frightened of refusing permission. We don't want to become a target from planners, builders, to turn Derbyshire Dale, to make it an easy target for Derbyshire, to build in Derbyshire Dales and push the luck. Otherwise, that will happen. So we need to be able to stand up to some of these applications and have the confidence to do that.
I do, as Chair, formally thank all members tonight for your contributions, and if there are no further comments, I formally then close the meeting. Oh, sorry. Yeah, would someone kindly, Councillor Lees and Dermot seconded. So all those in favour that we receive these reports, and that appears to be unanimous. Thank you.
Yeah.
Chair, we don't have to fill this in every time we come with the change, do we?
Unless there's an interest, leave it.
Yeah.